The pregnancy test showed twins, but my husband's eyes were fixed on another woman. "If you want to die, then go die," he told me when I tried to share the news. I left that night, taking nothing but my broken heart and unborn children. 6 years later, I'm a renowned artist with twins who have his eyes, and a shocking secret that will bring the mighty Alexander Reed to his knees. What he doesn't know is that his past sins aren't the only ones coming back to haunt him. My hand trembled as I stared at the 2 clear lines on the pregnancy test. Twins. The doctor had confirmed it just hours ago, and I still couldn't believe it. I placed a protective hand over my still flat stomach, trying to process the miracle growing inside me. 2 little lives, Alexander's and mine. The Reed Gallery opening was in full swing around me, the glittering crowd admiring paintings worth more than most people's homes. I was supposed to be networking, leveraging my art world connections like Alexander always reminded me to do. Instead, I was hiding in the bathroom, fighting waves of nausea while clutching life-changing news. "Olivia? Are you in there?" Maya, my only real friend in this world of wealth and pretension, knocked gently on the door. "People are asking about you." Alexander looks impatient. Of course he did. My husband never tolerated anything less than perfection, especially in public. I tucked the pregnancy test into my clutch and checked my reflection. Despite the expensive dress and carefully applied makeup, I couldn't hide the pallor in my cheeks or the hint of fear in my eyes. "Coming," I called, forcing brightness into my voice. "Just a moment." I found Alexander holding court near the main exhibit, his tall frame and commanding presence drawing admirers like moths to flame. At 32, he was already one of the city's most powerful business leaders, cold, calculated, and devastatingly handsome. I still remembered how it felt when he'd first noticed me at an art auction 3 years ago. The rush of being chosen by Alexander Reed had blinded me to so many red flags. "There you are," he said without looking at me, his tone carrying that edge of irritation I'd grown to dread. "Caroline was just asking about your perspective on Whitman's new collection." I smiled and engaged in the conversation, playing my part as the artistic, sensitive wife to Alexander's business genius. But my attention kept drifting to his phone, which he checked repeatedly throughout the evening. Each time, his expression shifted in a way it never did for me anymore, a softening around the eyes, the ghost of a genuine smile. When he excused himself for an important call, I felt my stomach twist with something fiercer than morning sickness. 20 minutes later, he still hadn't returned. The gallery was starting to empty, and I needed to sit down before my dizziness overwhelmed me. I searched the private rooms at the back, rehearsing how I'd tell him about the babies. Despite everything, I still believed the news of twins would change things between us. I froze outside his office when I heard his voice, that rare, warm tone he used to use with me. "You're being paranoid, Bella. Olivia suspects nothing." Bella. Isabella Moore. The name hit me like a physical blow. Alexander's ex-fiancée from before we met, the woman from his same wealthy social circle, whose family had connections his company needed. The woman he'd supposedly ended things with years ago. "I'm handling it," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "Once the acquisition is complete, we won't need her art world connections anymore. These things take finesse." I must have made a sound because he suddenly went silent. When I couldn't bow it anymore, I pushed the door open. Alexander stood with his back to me, but I could see the screen of his video call. Isabella Moore's perfect face stared back, her expression shifting from intimate to surprised. "Olivia," Alexander said, turning with practiced smoothness. "You remember Isabella? We were just discussing the Moore Foundation's potential investment in the new development." At 11 p.m. With that look in his eyes. "Of course," I managed, hating how weak my voice sounded. "The investment." Isabella's smile was pure poison wrapped in politeness. "Olivia, darling, you look pale. Are you feeling well?" Before I could answer, a fresh wave of nausea hit me. I barely made it to the waste paper basket before emptying my stomach. Through my humiliation, I heard Isabella's tinkling laugh. "Oh dear. Perhaps she's coming down with something. You should take her home, Alex. We can continue our discussion tomorrow." Alexander ended the call without saying goodbye to either of us. He didn't offer to help me up. Instead, he kept his distance, his expression a mask of disgust. "We have appearances to maintain," he said coldly. Pull yourself together. In that moment, with the taste of sickness in my mouth and the knowledge of new life in my womb, I saw my husband clearly for perhaps the first time. His handsome face couldn't hide the coldness in his eyes or the disdain in the set of his jaw. Whatever love had existed between us had long since been replaced by utility and obligation. And I wondered, with a clarity that terrified me, what kind of father would this man be to the twins I carried? The next morning, I woke to an empty bed. Alexander hadn't come home. Again. I barely made it to the bathroom before another wave of morning sickness hit me. Kneeling on the cold marble floor, I wondered how long I could hide my pregnancy. Alexander and I hadn't been intimate in months. He was always working late or traveling for business, but eventually, he would notice. My phone buzzed with a text from him, breakfast meeting with investors. Don't wait up tonight either. No, how are you feeling? No apology for leaving me at the gallery. Just instructions, as if I were another employee rather than his wife. I dragged myself to the kitchen where Mrs. Sullivan, the housekeeper who'd been with the Reed family for decades, was already preparing coffee. You should eat something, Mrs. Reed, she said, her eyes kind beneath her stern expression. You're looking peaky these days. I managed a few bites of toast before the smell of coffee sent me running back to the bathroom. When I returned, Mrs. Sullivan was looking at me differently. When are you due, Mrs. Reed? She asked quietly. I froze, one hand instinctively going to my stomach. How did you? I've been around long enough to recognize the signs, she said, her weathered face softening. Does Mr. Reed know yet? I shook my head, tears threatening. I tried to tell him last night, but... She patted my hand, an unusual gesture from the normally reserved woman. Perhaps at dinner tonight, when he's relaxed. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Alexander was never truly relaxed anymore, at least not around me. Later that afternoon, I was organizing my small studio in the east wing of the Reed mansion when my phone rang with an unknown number. Is this Olivia Reed? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's calling? This is Candace from Dr. Morrison's office. I'm calling about your recent ultrasound results. My heart raced. Is something wrong with the babies? No, Mrs. Reed, but Dr. Morrison noticed something unusual she'd like to discuss with you. Would you be able to come in tomorrow morning? I agreed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. What could be unusual? Were my twins in danger? As I hung up, I noticed a text from an unfamiliar number. He won't tell you about the Paris trip next week. Package delivered to his office today. Size small isn't your size, is it? Just thought you should know. I stared at the message, my hands suddenly cold. It could be a prank or a mistake. It had to be. But deep down, I knew. I found myself driving to Alexander's office building downtown without even making a conscious decision. The receptionist smiled when she saw me. I was still Mrs. Reed, after all, and waved me through to the executive floor. He's in a meeting, his assistant said, looking uncomfortable. But you can wait in his office if you'd like. Alexander's corner office showcased his success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern art worth millions on the walls, a desk that probably cost more than most cars. I stood there, feeling like an intruder in my husband's life. My eye caught on a glossy shopping bag tucked beside his desk. The distinctive packaging from La Paul, the high-end lingerie boutique where Alexander had once bought me anniversary gifts. Before I could stop myself, I peered inside. Black lace and red silk. Size small. I'm a medium. And a small card, for our Paris nights. Can't wait. B. Bella. Isabella. I don't know how long I stood there, the evidence of my husband's betrayal in my hands and the knowledge of his children in my womb. When the office door opened, I didn't even turn. What are you doing here? Alexander's voice was sharp with surprise and something else. Fear? I turned, still holding the lingerie. Planning a trip you forgot to mention. His face hardened as he closed the door behind him. My personal shopping is none of your concern. I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. Your personal shopping? Is that what we're calling it now? Put that down and lower your voice, he hissed, glancing at the door. This is my workplace. And that's our marriage you're destroying, I said, no longer bothering to hide my tears. I knew about the calls and texts, but this? Paris? While you're what? He snapped. Embarrassing me at galleries? Neglecting your connections that we need for the more acquisition? Playing the victim when I'm working day and night to maintain our lifestyle? His words hit like physical blows. I placed a protective hand over my stomach, gathering courage. Alexander, please listen. There's something important, a life at stake. I started, trying one last time to tell him about the twins. He cut me off with a dismissive wave. If you want to die, then go die. I don't have time for your dramatics tonight. The words hung in the air between us. If you want to die, then go die. Said to the mother of his unborn children. He hadn't even given me the chance to tell him. His phone rang, Isabella's special ringtone, and he moved to answer it. I need to take this. We'll discuss your behavior later. As I left his office on legs that barely supported me, I heard him switch to the warm voice he never used with me anymore. Bella, hi. Yes, everything's arranged for Paris. In the elevator down, I made my decision. By morning, I would be gone. I returned to the mansion with strange calm, as if watching myself from a distance. Alexander wouldn't be home until late, if at all. I had time. First, I transferred what I could from our joint account to my personal one, not enough to be considered theft, just enough to survive a few months. Alexander controlled most of our finances, another leash I'd accepted without question. In our bedroom, I packed light, clothes, toiletries, my grandmother's locket. As I reached for my passport in the safe, I accidentally grabbed Alexander's instead. I nearly put it back, then hesitated. Consider it child support in advance, I whispered, tucking both passports into my bag. A small act of rebellion that felt strangely satisfying. In my studio, I carefully wrapped my 3 best paintings, the ones galleries had shown interest in before Alexander convinced me that Reed wives don't sell art. I left behind the half-finished portrait of Alexander I'd been working on for months, never quite capturing the coldness in his eyes. As I was loading my car, Mrs. Sullivan appeared in the garage doorway, her expression unreadable in the dim light. You're leaving him, she said. Not a question. I froze, keys in hand. I have to. She nodded once, then pressed an envelope into my palm. My niece owns a small gallery in Seabrook. 3 hours south. She has a room above the shop. She added quietly, Mr. Reed doesn't know about her. I stared at the cash-filled envelope, unable to speak. He wasn't always like this, Mrs. Sullivan said, something like grief in her voice. But money changes people, and fear makes them cruel. Fear? What does Alexander have to fear? She just shook her head. Go now, before he returns. As I drove through the iron gates of the estate for the last time, rain began to fall, a sudden summer storm that matched my turbulent emotions. 2 hours into the journey, my phone exploded with notifications. Alexander had discovered my disappearance sooner than expected. Where are you? His text read. Not are you okay? Or please come home. Just demand and ownership. I turned off my phone and focused on the road, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my still flat stomach. It's just us now, I whispered to my unborn children. But we'll be okay. Seabrook was exactly what I needed, a small coastal town where the Reed name meant nothing. Maya, Mrs. Sullivan's niece, turned out to be a 40-something former New Yorker with bright blue hair and zero tolerance for pretension. Aunt Helen said you're pregnant and running from a bad situation, she said the morning after my arrival, setting down tea and crackers. The room is yours for as long as you need. No questions asked. I can't pay much. I've seen your work, she cut in, nodding to one of my wrapped canvases. You'll work in the gallery part-time, and we'll sell your paintings on commission. Fair. 2 weeks later, I was settling into a routine when the first dizzy spell hit. Maya found me collapsed in the storage room, blood staining my jeans. Hospital. Now, she said, already dialing 911. In the emergency room, the doctor's face was grave. You're experiencing some complications. Not uncommon with twins, but in your case. Will they be okay? I asked, clutching the thin hospital blanket. We need to get your blood pressure under control and keep you on bed rest. Do you have someone who can help care for you? For 1 weak moment, I thought of Alexander. With his resources, the best medical care would be guaranteed. All I'd have to do was return to that beautiful cage. As if reading my thoughts, Maya squeezed my hand. She has me. The next 3 months were a blur of doctor's appointments, strict bed rest, and painting whenever I could sit up. Maya rearranged the gallery storage room into a small studio where I could work from a reclining chair, the scent of oils and turpentine mixing with the salt air from the open window. Despite the doctor's concerns, my pregnancy progressed. I felt the first flutter of movement one afternoon while painting the ocean view, 2 distinct little nudges, as if my twins were taking turns saying hello. I promise you'll have a better life, I whispered to them. One where you're loved for who you are, not what you represent. 4 months into my new life, I sold my first painting in Seabrook, a seascape that captured the stormy horizon I'd driven through the night I left Alexander. A visiting collector paid enough to cover 2 months' rent. This is just the beginning, Maya said, uncorking a sparkling cider to celebrate while she enjoyed a glass of wine. You have a distinctive voice, Olivia. People are noticing. That night, I allowed myself to look at my silenced phone for the first time. Hundreds of missed calls and messages from Alexander, evolving from anger to concern to cold formality. My lawyers will be in touch. You've made a foolish choice. I hope whatever game you're playing was worth it. The last message was dated 2 weeks after I left. After that, nothing. Alexander Reed had moved on, just as I'd expected. What I didn't expect was the strange hollow feeling that knowledge left behind. I deleted all his messages and turned my phone back off. The past was behind me. What mattered now was the future growing inside me. My water broke during a thunderstorm. Poetic, Maya said later, dramatic weather for dramatic new arrivals. The twins are coming early, I gasped, clutching the gallery counter as another contraction hit. Maya's eyes widened. But you're only at 34 weeks. The drive to the hospital was a blur of pain and fear. Despite months of preparation, the reality of bringing 2 lives into the world, alone, terrified me. My doctor had warned that premature twins might face complications. As they rushed me into the delivery room, I fought a sudden, irrational urge to call Alexander. 26 hours of labor later, my son entered the world first, tiny but fierce, with a cry that belied his small size. His sister followed 7 minutes after, even smaller but somehow more determined. They are fighters, the nurse said as she placed my daughter in my arms while another nurse handled my son. Just like their mama. Through my exhaustion, I studied their perfect faces. Both had Alexander's distinctive green eyes, a shock of color against their newborn complexions. But my son had my mother's chin, and my daughter, the shape of my eyes. What are their names? The nurse asked, pen poised over the birth certificates. I had considered Reed family names, thinking Alexander deserved that much. But looking at them now, I knew they deserved their own identities. Leo, I said, touching my son's dark wisps of hair. For courage. And Aria. For the music I hoped would fill her life. Last name, the nurse prompted. I hesitated only a moment. Chen. My family name. The first 3 months were the hardest. The twins needed special care due to their early arrival. Leo had jaundice that required phototherapy, while Aria struggled with feeding. I barely slept, dividing my time between the NICU and pumping breast milk around the clock. Through it all, Maya was my rock, bringing food I didn't remember to eat and taking gallery photos of my newest paintings, work inspired by the twins, with paired images that complemented each other while remaining distinct. These are special, she said, examining a diptych I'd somehow completed during midnight feedings. There's something about the duality that speaks to people. She was right. My twin-themed paintings began selling to local collectors, then to visitors from neighboring cities. By the time Leo and Aria were 6 months old, I had enough commissions to afford a small house near the beach, nothing like the Reed mansion, but ours, safe and filled with light. I set up a proper studio in the sunroom, where I could paint while watching the twins nap in a shared crib. They were inseparable, these two, already developing their distinct personalities but clearly connected in ways I couldn't fully understand. Leo was thoughtful and observant, studying everything with his father's analytical gaze. Aria was bold and expressive, reaching for bright colors and making her opinions known through imperious baby gestures. Despite their differences, they communicated in their own language of coos and babbles, often falling silent in synchronized sleep. On their first birthday, I finally allowed myself to search Alexander's name online. The business pages showed him at charity galas and board meetings, Isabella Moore always at his side, now wearing an engagement ring that caught the camera flashes. His face looked harder somehow, the lines around his mouth more pronounced. One photo caption noted, Reed and fiancé Moore pivot Reed Enterprises toward tech investments following last year's financial restructuring. Financial restructuring. So there had been money troubles after all. Mrs. Sullivan's words about fear making people cruel suddenly made more sense. Dada? Leo asked one evening, pointing at the tablet I'd quickly set aside when he toddled into the room. At 18 months, both twins were walking and adding new words daily. No, sweetheart. Just work, I said, gathering him into my lap. But the question lingered as the twins grew. By their third birthday, they noticed other children with fathers. Leo would observe families at the park with quiet intensity, while Aria would boldly ask other children, "Where's your daddy?" I told them the simplest version of the truth. Your daddy lives far away. He wasn't ready to be a parent when you were born. Will he ever be ready? Aria asked, her green eyes, so like Alexander's, pacing through my practiced response. I don't know, sweetie, I answered honestly. But we're doing just fine, aren't we? And we were. By their fourth birthday, my Twin Visions series had gained national attention. An influential critic from New York had discovered my work during a coastal vacation and written a glowing review that described my paintings as meditations on duality, connection and separation, technical masterpieces with emotional depth. Galleries from major cities began calling. I was selective, preferring to work with smaller, independent spaces until the email arrived from Winston Gallery in New York, one of the most prestigious contemporary art spaces in the country. Ms. Chen, we would be honored to feature your work in our fall exhibition. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. It was also in Alexander's city. You have to go, Liv, Maya insisted, pouring more wine into her glass while I nursed a single sparkling water. Winston Gallery doesn't just call anyone. This is career-defining. It's in New York, I said, as if that explained everything. In many ways, it did. Maya sighed. You can't avoid Alexander's city forever. New York has 8 million people. What are the chances you'll even see him? But we both knew the art world was small, and the circle of wealthy collectors even smaller. If my exhibition succeeded, Alexander would eventually hear the name Olivia Chen. Whether he'd connect it to his former wife Olivia Reed was another question. The twins are starting kindergarten in the fall, I hedged. It's not a good time to travel. The exhibition is in October. School will be well underway. Maya Jr. and I can watch them for the opening weekend, Maya's partner offered, bouncing 5-year-old Leo on her knee while Aria colored intently nearby. I looked at my children, healthy, happy, and unaware of the Reed fortune they might have inherited in another life. Part of me had been protecting them all these years, but another part had been hiding. From Alexander. From my own potential. What are you really afraid of? Maya asked softly. That Alexander will find us. That he'll try to take them. That he won't care at all. That seeing him will remind me of everything I once thought we had. I'm afraid of disrupting their lives, I said instead. They are settled here. Aria looked up from her drawing, a family portrait with Maya and partner included, but a conspicuous empty space to the right. Who's this for? She asked, pointing to the space. It's just space. In case we need to add someone, she explained with 5-year-old logic. The twins had been adding these spaces to their drawings lately. Not explicitly asking for a father, but creating room for someone missing. That night, after tucking them in, I wrote back to Winston Gallery accepting their invitation. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of preparation. I created 4 new large-scale diptychs specifically for the exhibition, plus a secret 5th piece, a triptych that told the story of betrayal, exile, and rebirth through abstract forms and twin imagery. This one's different, the gallery owner, Thomas Winston, noted when he visited my studio in Seabrook to finalize selections. There's anger here, but also triumphant. It's personal, was all I said. It's your masterpiece, he replied. We'll position it as the exhibition centerpiece. As October approached, I arranged for the twins to stay with Maya, booked a hotel in New York far from Alexander's usual haunts, and prepared myself emotionally for returning to the city where I'd once been Mrs. Alexander Reed. What I didn't prepare for was Leo and Aria's reaction. "We want to come too," Leo stated calmly over breakfast, 1 week before my departure. "It's a work trip, sweetheart. Boring adult stuff." "But it's your big painting show," Aria protested. "We're in your paintings." "Not exactly in them. We're your twins and they're twin paintings," Leo reasoned with impeccable 5-year-old logic. "We should be there." I looked at their determined little faces, Aria's dramatic pout and Leo's serious frown, and felt my resolve weakening. They'd never been to a big city, never seen snow, never ridden in a yellow taxi. And selfishly, I wanted them with me on what could be the most important night of my career. "We'll be super good," Aria promised, her green eyes wide. "We'll wear our fancy clothes and talk about art like you taught us. And we won't ask strangers for candy," Leo added, referencing a recent playground incident involving an overly generous grandmother and too many lollipops. Against my better judgment, I called Maya. "What do you think about the twins coming to New York?" "I think they should see their mother shine," she said after a pause. "But Liv, you should be prepared. If Alexander is still tracking the art world." "It's been 6 years," I said. "He's engaged to Isabella. He's moved on." Maya's silence spoke volumes. 2 weeks later, we boarded a plane to New York, the twins vibrating with excitement in their first-ever airplane seats. Aria chatted non-stop to our seatmate, a bemused elderly woman who patiently answered every question. Leo quietly studied the safety card as if memoizing evacuation procedures. The city overwhelmed them at first. The noise, the pace, the sheer vertical scale of the buildings. Our hotel room offered a view of Central Park, which Leo declared not as good as our beach, but acceptable. The day before the exhibition, Thomas invited us to the gallery for a private viewing. The twins walked solemnly through the space, their small heads tilted back to take in my oversized canvases. "That's us," Aria whispered to Leo, pointing to a diptych that featured twin columns of light emerging from darkness. Leo nodded sagely. "I'm the blue one, you're the purple one." As they discussed which paintings contained their essence, Thomas pulled me aside. "The guest list for tomorrow is exceptional. Collectors, critics, museum curators, and several prominent business leaders." My stomach tightened. "Such as?" He checked his tablet. "The Morehampton Foundation confirmed. They are bringing several clients, including..." He scrolled down, then smiled. "Alexander Reed of Reed Enterprises. His patronage would be quite a coup." My vision tunneled briefly, the gallery lights suddenly too bright. "Mommy." Leo was at my side, his small hand in mine. "Are you okay? Your face went all empty." I squeezed his hand, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little nervous about tomorrow." The truth was far more complicated. After 6 years of building a life without Alexander Reed, I was about to face him again, with his children by my side. The night of the exhibition, I knelt before the twins in our hotel room, straightening Leo's little bow tie and adjusting the ribbon in Aria's hair. "Remember what we practiced?" I asked them. Leo nodded solemnly. "If someone asks about the paintings, we say my mother explores duality through complementary imagery, and then we talk about our favorite colors. And if someone asks about you," I pressed gently, "we say you're the best artist in the whole wide world," Aria declared with a flourish. "And?" I prompted. "And if anyone asks about our daddy, we say we don't talk to strangers about personal questions," Leo finished, his green eyes serious beneath his dark curls. I kissed their foreheads, trying to quell the anxiety churning in my stomach. "Perfect. You two are the most important people in my life, you know that, right?" They nodded in unison, a habit that still sometimes startled me with its synchronicity. The Winston Gallery was transformed for the evening. My twin-themed paintings glowed under perfect lighting, an elegant waitstaff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Thomas had positioned my triptych, titled simply Exile and Return, on the main wall, visible from the entrance. "People are already discussing prices," Thomas murmured as we arrived. "The Kensington Museum curator has been staring at the blue diptych for 20 minutes. Under normal circumstances, this would have been the highlight of my career. But all I could think about was the possibility of seeing Alexander again. The twins, however, were in their element. Despite being the only children present, they navigated the crowd with surprising grace. Leo observed everything quietly, occasionally whispering astute observations to me about people's reactions. Aria charmed everyone she spoke to, explaining my artistic process with creative embellishments. Mommy paints when we're sleeping because that's when our dreams connect to her dreams, I overheard her telling an amused elderly collector, who promptly reserved one of my smaller pieces. An hour into the event, Thomas appeared at my elbow, practically vibrating with excitement. "The Morehampton Foundation people are here," he whispered. "And yes, Reed is with them." My glass nearly slipped from my fingers. "Where?" "Just arriving. The woman in the black dress is Isabella Moore. Reed is, there he is, speaking with the curator." I turned slowly, my heart pounding. 6 years had changed Alexander in subtle ways. His hair had touches of silver at the temples now, and he carried himself with even more authority. But his profile was achingly familiar, the straight nose, the strong jaw, the way he slightly tilted his head when listening. He was nodding at something the curator was saying, his attention fixed on my largest diptych. He hadn't seen me yet. Isabella stood nearby, elegant in an expensive black dress, a massive engagement ring catching the light. She looked bored, checking her phone while Alexander studied my work. "He doesn't know it's you?" Thomas asked, confused. I assumed with the same last. "I reverted to my maiden name," I explained quietly. "Chen." Understanding dawned on Thomas's face. "I see. Well, this is interesting." I scanned the room for the twins and spotted them by the refreshment table. Leo was carefully selecting a cookie while Aria chatted with the server. Safe for the moment. "If you'll excuse me," I said to Thomas, moving in the opposite direction from Alexander. I managed to avoid direct contact for another half hour, speaking with critics and collectors while keeping the twins close. But the gallery wasn't large enough to hide forever. It happened when I was discussing a potential commission with a museum director. I sensed a change in the room's energy, like the shift in air pressure before a storm. "This series is extraordinary," a familiar voice said behind me. "The tension between connection and separation is visceral." I turned slowly. Alexander's eyes widened in recognition, his composed expression faltering for just a moment before his professional mask returned. "Olivia," he said, my name like a stone dropping into still water. "I didn't realize, you're the Chen everyone's talking about." "Alexander," I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. "Yes, I am." We stood facing each other, 6 years of absence between us. His gaze moved to my left hand, noting the absence of his ring. Isabella appeared at his side, possessively linking her arm through his. "Alex, darling, they're ready for the investment discussion." She stopped abruptly, finally looking at me. "Do you two know each other?" Before either of us could answer, a small voice called out, "Mommy. Leo won't share the last chocolate thing." Aria pushed through the crowd toward me, her green eyes, Alexander's eyes, bright with indignation. Leo followed more slowly, his matching eyes serious and watchful. I saw the exact moment Alexander registered who they were, what they were. His face drained of color, his gaze moving rapidly between the twins, calculating ages and dates. Isabella followed his gaze, her expression morphing from confusion to shock. "Your children?" Alexander asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes," I said simply. "My children." Leo stepped closer to me, suddenly shy under Alexander's intense scrutiny. "Mommy, who is this man?" The question hung in the air between us. Around us, the gallery continued its elegant hum of conversation, but in our small circle, time seemed suspended. Alexander knelt down slowly until he was at eye level with the twins. "I'm an old friend of your mother's," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "My name is Alexander." Aria, never one for shyness, stepped forward with her hand extended like a miniature businesswoman. "I'm Aria Chen. I'm 5 3/4. This is my brother Leo. We're twins but not identical because he's a boy and I'm a girl, but we're still twins." Alexander took her small hand in his, something like wonder crossing his features. "It's very nice to meet you both." "Your eyes are like ours," Leo observed quietly, still half hidden behind my leg. Alexander's gaze flicked up to mine, 1,000 questions in that look. Yes, he said simply. They are. Isabella's grip on Alexander's arm had tightened to what must have been a painful degree. Alex, she said through a frozen smile, we really should join the others. In a moment, he replied without looking at her. Thomas, sensing the tension, appeared with perfect timing. Miss Chen, the Times critic would love a word about your process. And perhaps the children would enjoy our special dessert table in the back room. What kind of desserts? Arya asked immediately, distracted. Chocolate fountains, Thomas said with a conspiratorial wink. And I believe there might be some artistic cookies that need decorating. Can we, Mommy? Leo asked, his reserve melting at the mention of cookies. I hesitated, looking between my children and Alexander. Thomas, would you mind taking them? I'll be there in just a minute. Once the twins were safely escorted away, the pretense of polite conversation evaporated. How old are they? Alexander demanded, his voice low and controlled despite the storm I could see building behind his eyes. 5 3/4, as Arya so precisely stated. Alexander's jaw tightened as he did the math. You were pregnant when you left. Yes. And you didn't tell me. I tried, I said, keeping my voice even despite the old anger resurging. The night before I left. You told me, and I quote, if you want to die, then go die. You were too busy planning your Paris trip with Isabella to listen. Isabella flinched at this, her perfect composure cracking slightly. Alex, what is she talking about? But Alexander didn't take his eyes off me. They are mine. Biologically, yes. I have a right to. You have no rights. I cut him off sharply, though still keeping my voice low. You signed divorce papers. I'd never filed them, a detail I kept to myself for the moment. You made no attempt to find me after the first 2 weeks. As far as the world is concerned, Leo and Arya are my children. Only mine. Isabella tugged at Alexander's arm. This is absurd. She's clearly after your money. Why else would she suddenly appear at an event she knew you'd attend? I'm here because Winston Gallery invited me, I replied coldly. My work sells quite well without the Reed name attached to it. I don't need or want Alexander's money. Alexander hadn't taken his eyes off me, as if trying to reconcile the confident woman before him with the timid wife he'd dismissed so easily. We need to talk privately. Without an audience. I glanced around, suddenly aware that several gallery patrons were watching our interaction with poorly disguised interest. Fine. Tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock at my hotel. I handed him a business card with the hotel information. As his fingers brushed mine, I felt a jolt of unwelcome awareness, my body remembering what my mind wanted to forget. I'll be there, he said, tucking the card into his jacket pocket. We have a lot to discuss. The children won't be present, I added firmly. This first conversation will be just us. He nodded once before Isabella pulled him away, her face a mask of controlled fury. I heard her whisper fiercely as they walked, DNA test, Alex. Immediately. Don't be a fool. I made my way to the back room where Thomas had taken the twins. They were happily decorating cookies, their faces smudged with chocolate and icing. For a moment, I simply watched them, these miraculous beings who had given me strength when I had none. What would I tell them? How much did they need to know? Leo, observant as always, would have questions about the man with their eyes. Arya, direct and fearless, might demand answers I wasn't prepared to give. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Critics praised my work, collectors made substantial offers, and Thomas beamed with satisfaction at the exhibition's success. But all I could think about was tomorrow's meeting with Alexander. Back at the hotel, I tucked the exhausted twins into bed. As I kissed Leo's forehead, he murmured sleepily, "That man looked at us funny." "Which man, sweetheart?" "The one with our eyes." He looked sad and happy at the same time. My heart clenched. Even half asleep, Leo missed nothing. Sometimes art makes people feel different emotions at once, I said, smoothing his dark curls. It wasn't the art, Leo said with certainty before drifting off to sleep. After checking that both twins were truly asleep, I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder I rarely accessed. Photos from my old life, The formal wedding portrait where neither Alexander nor I was truly smiling, vacation snapshots where we stood slightly apart despite being in paradise, a rare candid moment at a charity event where Alexander had actually laughed at something I said. I stared at his face, trying to reconcile the cold, ambitious man who had discarded me with the one who had knelt gently before his unknown children today. My phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. I want to know my children. Name your terms. Ah. Typical Alexander, assuming everything had a price, a negotiation strategy. What he didn't understand was that some things couldn't be bought or bargained for. I texted back, they aren't assets to be acquired. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come alone. Alexander arrived at precisely 10 a.m., looking less like the confident CEO and more like a man who hadn't slept. The twins were happily occupied in the hotel's supervised children's program, a luxury I'd specifically chosen for this purpose. Thank you for meeting, he said formally as I let him into my suite. We sat across from each other in the small sitting area, the Manhattan skyline visible through the window between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of 6 years and 2 children filling the space. They are beautiful, he finally said. Healthy? Yes. Leo had some respiratory issues as an infant due to their premature birth, but he's fine now. Aria has always been robust. Alexander absorbed this information with a slight nod. Their personalities. Leo is thoughtful, analytical, observant. Aria is bold, creative, determined. They are both intelligent and kind. They have your kindness, he acknowledged, surprising me. And my eyes. And your stubbornness, I added with the ghost of a smile. Something shifted in Alexander's expression, a softening around the edges. Why didn't you tell me? After you left. Would it have mattered? I challenged. You were with Isabella within weeks. The tabloids were full of your glamorous new life. That was, he stopped himself, reconsidering. It was complicated. It always is with you. Alexander stood and paced to the window. The Reed Group was in trouble. Isabella's family connections provided contracts we desperately needed. My grandfather's poor investments had left us vulnerable to a hostile takeover. Marriage to Isabella was a business arrangement, I finished for him. Like our marriage was. He turned to face me. That's not entirely fair. What's not fair is dismissing your pregnant wife while having an affair with your ex. Alexander's jaw tightened. I didn't know you were pregnant. Because you wouldn't listen. I tried to tell you, Alexander. I literally had the pregnancy test in my hand. I was going through the worst financial crisis of my life, he shot back. Everything my family had built was about to collapse. So that justified how you treated me? The Reed name and fortune were always more important than anything, or anyone, else. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration I remembered from our marriage. I'm not proud of who I was then. But these children, my children, deserve to know their father. They've done perfectly well without one for nearly 6 years. Because you gave them no choice, he countered. I have rights. No, I stated firmly. You gave up any rights the moment you told me to go die and sign those divorce papers. His eyes narrowed. What divorce papers? I hesitated, then walked to my suitcase and extracted a well-worn envelope. Inside was the agreement Alexander had signed the night before I left, the paper yellowed with age. These papers, I said, handing them to him. The ones you signed without even reading. Alexander scanned the document, his expression darkening. These were never filed. No, I admitted. I kept them as insurance. But legally, we're still married. The shock on his face would have been satisfying if not for the gravity of our situation. Does Isabella know, he asked quietly, that the woman you've been engaged to for years can't actually marry you because you already have a wife? No, I imagine not. Alexander sat heavily on the couch. This is not what I expected. Life rarely is, I said, sitting opposite him again. Alexander, what do you really want here? I want to know my children. I want them to know me, not as the man I was, but as the man I am now. And what kind of man is that? Before he could answer, my phone rang. The hotel's children's program. Miss Chen? I'm sorry to disturb you, but your daughter is asking for you rather insistently. I sighed. I'll be right down. When I hung up, Alexander asked, problem? Arya being Arya. She's probably bored with the activities and creating a minor uprising. I need to go down. I'll come with you, he said, standing. That's not a good idea. Please, he said, and the unfamiliar word from his lips stopped me. Just, let me see them again. No introductions necessary. Against my better judgment, I nodded. In the children's area, we found Arya standing defiantly before a frazzled activity coordinator while Leo sat quietly in the corner, reading. Mommy. Arya called when she saw me. They won't let me paint on the big paper. They said it's for tomorrow, but I have ideas now. I knelt to her level. Sometimes we have to wait for the right moment, even when we have wonderful ideas. Arya's gaze shifted past me to Alexander. Her eyes narrowed slightly, so like her father when assessing a situation. You're the man from the art place, she said directly. The one with our eyes. Alexander nodded, keeping a respectful distance. I am. Leo had noticed us now and came to stand beside his sister. The twins unconsciously moved closer together, presenting a united front. My heart swelled with pride at their innate solidarity. Are you Mommy's friend? Leo asked carefully. Alexander glanced at me before answering. I knew your mother a long time ago. Before we were born. Arya pressed. Yes, he said simply. The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent communications that never cease to amaze me. Are you our father? Leo asked quietly. The room seemed to freeze. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Alexander knelt down, meeting their eyes, his eyes, on their level. Yes, he said softly. I am. Arya looked at me for confirmation. When I gave a small nod, she stepped forward fearlessly. Why haven't you been with us? She demanded, hands on her hips. It's complicated, Alexander began. Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to explain, Leo observed. A surprised laugh escaped Alexander. You're right, he acknowledged. The truth is, I made mistakes. Big ones. I didn't know about you two, and by the time I could have found out, your mother had already left to protect you both. From what? Arya asked. Alexander met my gaze over their heads. From who I was then.